upon self-realization, the mind silences significantly, and what you come to realize with self-realization is that the one you are is perfectly silent. So you actually already are silent. It's kind of funny. You already are what you're seeking, of course, and that's the kick when you finally realize it, is that you've always been that one, which is nothing more than awareness, simple awareness. And the awareness is aware of everything. It is aware of every thought. It's aware of every experience. It's in the waking state. It's in the sleeping state. It's in the dreaming state. And it is you. It is I. It is everyone. And that's what self-realization is all about, realizing that silent one is you, and not only you, it's everything. That's why they call it non-duality. It's because everything comes from consciousness. Everything comes from this awareness. And when you get still, and when the mind becomes still, what happens is the mind reflects consciousness, and it reflects it perfectly, and you get a really great feel for this oneness of everything.
Thanks, Tom. Tara has seen me, and some of you have seen me interviewing or talking with people, and I've contemplated my own life, and I know that there is a stillness, and I don't always pay attention to it. And so, like Tom was saying, awareness is ever present, which is obvious, right? To your thoughts. I mean, why wouldn't it be? But yet, maybe my obligations or my worries or my issues are ever present too. It seems like, right? And so then I don't really notice my awareness or my stillness. And even for those that are very still, they still live in the world. They're still subject to the conditions of the world. They still have their upbringing and their habits and their preferences. And so then something runs us in a way that we're not cognizant of. And I just keep wondering, like, okay, there's an essential stillness, and there's another part of our life that we do our daily activities, right? And whatever seems necessary to us. And we confess to conditioning, right? We know that some things are similar to even a long time ago. And so then we say, well, that's the past conditioning, right? And for some reason, some of us even have the idea that, okay, like, the past is only in the present, because what is the past? How could it be anywhere? You can't visit it. So we know intellectually that there's really no past, and that we're probably recreating it in some way. We have this habit, we call it a habit or a momentum that recreates the past. And we wonder, well, what's the mechanism of that? How does that happen, right? And what's come to me is that what's not distinguished runs us. It's still a form of self-talk, or a form of collective self-talk. And like, for instance, we know that confusion only comes out of thoughts, right? Without thoughts, I'm not confused. And so then you can say, well, I don't have to think, and then I won't be confused. But really, you're going to be thinking again, for sure. And so then there's that seed of, let's call it confusion or inaction, or where I hold myself back, or uh, how I don't believe in myself, how I recreate my limits and my limitations. And I just believe that that could be uncovered in some way, but by looking at words, looking at thoughts, looking at our self-talk is a good way to say it for me. And I don't know, does that give anyone the shivers or what? Because we think, okay, like, I'll just go a little farther. And I think we can all notice that our anxiety comes from our mental activity. And once we kind of beat that one, we find a refuge from it. You might not want to go back there. And we say, no, why go back there? That was kind of like a failed experiment. But then there we are, we don't have that tool anymore. And that's a tool that, you say, well, why not stay in the timeless? Well, we're not going to always be in the timeless, or should we? The timeless just means that place where everything is okay, where that stillness is, where we can see awareness reflected in every living and dead thing. Who knows if the mountains and the rocks are not living in every living thing. And they just have a slower pace of life. But we also have our society, which is a realm of agreements. We agree that the world works like this, or we disagree, but it's the same. I don't know, does anyone want to take up that line of reasoning and say if it sounds interesting or it sounds like a threat?
And trace them back to certain earlier conditioning practice. I found one aphorism quite helpful today, which was that recognition is freedom, and that actually by understanding exactly where I'm coming from or why I'm acting in a particular way, it actually is possible for it to be brought from what is unconscious to conscious. And as soon as it's brought into my own awareness, my own sphere of awareness, instead of it being pushed down into the unconscious, it's then possible to see it and feel it. And I'm almost always free of it. Unless it's something that's been going on and on and on and on, in which case it takes longer to be free of it. But in my view, it is possible to be gradually to become completely free from all one's conditioning. And I find it really quite not only valuable but fascinating to actually unravel. I suppose one way of calling it is egoic structures. And I've also found that meditation actually has not been the answer, which I had practiced for a very long period of time, so I gave it a good shot, like sort of 40 years. But in fact, I found that the real way to become free is to seriously examine the structures which have been impeding just naturalness, basically. I wish I could think of a concrete example of that. There's usually hundreds of them around.
I don't know. I think I could think of some because if I heard you right, I mean, I totally go with that. I think you said recognition is freedom. And so then that recognition somehow is a distinction. Please say that one more time.
What's looking at the conditioned mind is still the conditioned mind sometimes.
Yes.
So I guess there's an unraveling. And sometimes it's when the two of the one that's looking at the self drops away, and there's really a falling back into the natural self, then that there almost doesn't seem to be any need to analyze or look at the past or where the conditioning is coming from. It just all seems to flow into a state where things are seen and it's apparent, and there really is no right or wrong or way of being or acting. It all just falls into it is. You know, that's what I've noticed. But anytime I try to analyze it, I find that I get really judgmental. And so that kind of stops me from really, that's my conditioning that comes in when I try and observe that.
So what I'm trying to do is to open a group of people to something new, right? Some new set. You know, a new set analyzing brings you into judgment. And that's part of the conditioned mind, right? In other words, somehow you've got a trace that when you analyze, you go to judgment, and well, one of your judgments is that this is no good, so I'm not going to do it anymore, right? And so then that's kind of a block, right? And then you said that what's looking at the conditioned mind is the conditioned mind, and so then that kind of tends to mean that it's building up. It's actually throwing another log on the fire. And so then it's better to take the logs off, you know. But anyhow, the fire, I'm saying, is more than just the obvious fire, that there's a non-obvious fire. In fact, you know, the fact that you're not looking at the conditioned mind is just another conditioning. You know, and I'm not going to guarantee that to you. I'm not going to say believe me in that, but, you know, consider it. That's just, everything is conditioning. What's not conditioning in this human world? You know, you say, I can sit in peace. I can sit in peace too, you know. But I mean, I'm not going to sit there. I'm 70. I'm almost 70. I'm not going to sit there for another 30 years, you know, and sit in peace. And that was my life, right? What contribution is that to my family, my children? You know, it's some contribution that I absorb, you know, anxiety coming at me, right? Because I'm sitting in peace. But I mean, don't be so sure that you can, you know, it's a belief, like any other belief, that I can sit and I can be, and, you know, to me, that's a belief, you know, that I can sit somewhere and be silent, and that, and I can notice the perfection of the world. Right. You know, wherever we focus, we can notice. We can notice that the world is totally marvelous, even if we're looking at a bug. We don't have to look at society. We don't have to look at society. Go ahead.
I guess imperfection is part of what is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that I'm striving for that perfection.
Yeah.
Or what's considered. I would like the space to be and experience everything without feeling like I have to drop out because something isn't perfect.
Okay. I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, what I'd like to say is you're perfectly right, Anita. You don't. How can I say this? Okay, you're already perfect. You're perfect in every way. This idea that we have to become something or become better or have a stiller mind or do this or do that, all of this doing is not needed. Okay? What's needed is an understanding. When you have the understanding and you could put, then everything just falls into place the way it naturally is. In your, it already is that way, but I mean, it falls into your realization that everything is fine. And then automatically the mind just calms down. Everything just calms down. And the ego doesn't get in the way. Ego's fine. The world is fine. Everything is fine. You just let everything be. You just let everything be, and you stop trying to manipulate things, and you stop trying to do that because you understand that you're not the doer. You're the still awareness. And you can go out and do whatever you want. It doesn't stop you from doing. It doesn't stop the apparent person from doing. It's just that whatever is done, you're the awareness watching it. You're always at peace, no matter what's being done. It doesn't matter anymore. And the ego doesn't get in the way. The world doesn't get in the way. The chatty mind doesn't get in the way. Nothing gets in the way because you're that right now. You're absolutely perfect. You've got these Zen teachers making you sit in meditation for 15 years and telling you about your ego being a problem and everything. And you've got to do. And you're going around doing all this nonsense when all you got to do is get an understanding of how things really are. And then you can just relax and just let all that go.
This whole point of this is kind of like I'm trying to figure out how to administer a 6-person talk. And at a certain time, like next week probably, we'll try to make it more formal, and we'll try to make it so that we can present some material, right? And in a way, we have to get ourselves ready to receive some material, and we have to understand what our constraints are in receiving. Because really, what can we learn that's new? Right? If I answer every one of you, like if Tom says, just being natural is the point of living, and then I can just as easily say, well, all my doing and all my running is also being natural, and it's part of living, and that would always be in the content of my life would always be in the spaciousness of my life, but I'm not here to answer every one of you. I'm just trying to learn how to administer this and make everyone feel a part of it, and then also get to a point where probably next week we'll run one, and maybe we'll run a few for Europe on a different time schedule, so you don't have to stay up so late, Patricia. And then eventually in October and stuff, I'd like to actually, have a series of meetings where we can listen to each other. Because I like what Patricia said, is recognition is freedom, right? And then we don't really recognize what's within us, whether it's conditioning or whether it's stillness or whatever, because somehow it's not heard.
Well, it's exactly what I was what I was saying. It's while it's hidden, that you can't do anything about it. It's literally out of. It's only when it becomes obvious. That's what I mean. That it's possible to actually see why you've been behaving in a particular way, which hasn't been natural. So, and I also think that this whole thing is finite. That it is possible. I actually believe that there's that the conditioning is finite, and that it is possible to be at a certain juncture when you've seen so much of. You've recognised so much of things that have gone on that you finally are able to either recognise it when it comes up and then be completely free of it, or not have it anymore. Because sometimes when these things come up, you know absolutely for sure that they're never going to come up again. They're never going to cause any more problems.
Yeah. Patricia, even if it's not finite, or let's say it's finite but really big, but I have an idea that once you notice the mechanism, you're the master. You're the master, and you don't even have to go scour out the pot and every little burnt-on spot that's on there. Once you realize the mechanism, and so I totally agree. I don't know.
Yes, I'm sure it's to do with the mechanism. That it's and that there are certain principles which seem to operate. I've actually been looking today at this question of the feeling of loss, and I feel that it is kind of a major block to wholeness is the belief that you've lost something, and that actually once you recognize that that the loss is just an ancient feeling of abandonment that's been around for years and years and years.
I guess my passion is to integrate mindfulness and meditation into psychotherapy. So, Patricia, when you were saying that meditation did nothing for you in 40 years, I wonder if there's a particular kind of meditation that brings you to be more aware of, I know this is another controversial topic, but past triggers and things like that in a deeper way, rather than just kind of blissing out and going blank type of meditation.
Well, the meditation was 2.5 hours a day for 40 years. What I experienced was deep stillness and bliss as well. But what it didn't address was, although it allowed me to enjoy the transcendent awareness of universality, it didn't actually address the nitty-gritty of the conditioning where I was coming from. So, although I enjoyed bliss and transcendence and universality, I didn't actually ever address the problems which were preventing me from actually being here during the rest of the day. So it's not that I'm rubbishing it, because I still meditate, but it's just that it wasn't the whole picture. And that
I know what you mean. I think there's like a few different kinds of meditation, and both purposes are good purposes, but sometimes there's things that you need to uncover that are a little bit more hard work meditation than I forgot, there's different names for it, but there's like concentration or awareness. What really worked for me was the body scans, because I would tune into a certain part of my body and then just start to cry, and I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, I guess it's like an ancient pain, like you were talking about. Like, but I know there's a way to tune into that through meditation.
Yes, there is, and
release it as well.
As you say, these things are stored in the body, and they can be released through the body. But I don't think that's the whole story. I think that that sometimes they are released either not only in the body, but they could be the emotions, or they could be intellect or thinking. And for that, a different process is required, because it's not just the body that we're talking about. We're talking about the whole rather than one particular facet.
That's exactly what I want to pursue as a psychotherapist. I want to get to that place through meditation to, well, when I was a teenager, I went to a therapist who brought it all together for me. And it's like magical, like emotions, thoughts, meditation, and just like this huge weight off of my shoulders. And I really want to learn how to do that.
So scanning the body, I mean, I like the idea of scanning the body, because then I can just see, am I contracted here? And usually when there is a contraction, I notice that there is a thought or a story that is feeding that contraction.
Yes.
So I can inquire into that feeling. I know that feel when I'm contracted. I know that feeling not to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you know, and really, I don't even need to think about my past or unraveling anything other than be here and meet the contraction and meet the story, and in meeting the story and then verbalizing it, it releases, like, you know, there's this embodiment of the experience, and then it releases immediately, and then I'm just here.
I would add one
beautiful.
thing, and especially for Anita, because when she says inquire, let's say that is not the same as analyzing. Because analyzing is shifting around a lot of thoughts and trying to build a castle with them, or trying to build them in a logical way, and trying to, you take your analysis to look as if any of those thoughts are contradictory, or, you know, trying to sort out a logical structure. But to me, inquiry is only having an intention to allow your attention, your consciousness, to fall on what's happening, and then you actually let it go. You let it go into that spaciousness, and so then that's actually very relaxing. Whereas analysis could be very taxing and tiring.
And building a story
building
and
a
looking
confusion,
for
right?
evidence and.
Yeah, what you can really see in those instances is what well, Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. Okay, and it's really true that we hold these stories in the subtle bodies that surrounds us. We hold these stories and the pain of them. And then when you inquire into them, like the way Rena was talking about, you allow that contraction to loosen. The contraction loosens, and you look into it, and you just let it express itself. You don't have to get involved with it. You just let, and the body can do it. The body will just show you, you know, where it is. And it's the sensation in the body, and you'll just open up to it, and you just watch it and let it have its say, you know. And it's like magic. It just opens up, and this contraction opens, and you realize, oh, I've been carrying this for who knows how long. It's like letting down a bag of rocks. You just put them down, just say, oh, that feels good. So inquiry is definitely a great tool. Excellent. Yeah.
And then if you're doing an inquiry, or actually if you're verbalizing, and there is no resonance in the body, like no contraction or no alteration to your contraction, you can just let it go and say, well, oops, that one wasn't right. You know, like I just threw one in there to see if it resonated for me, and it didn't. So then you can let that one go. And then if some other verbalization comes, you can track them down there just by scanning the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in that moment of that seeing, you're in that creative space. You know, you can create what it is that, you know, allows something else to express that's not so contracting, shall we say.
Okay, like I want to show you something that, you know. Okay, maybe next Sunday we're gonna kick this thing off in a little more formal way. Now I'm kind of hanging over here trying to figure out what I'm doing. But let's see. I want to show you one way to kind of get some information in here to pass through the. So if I show this slide, you may or may not be able to read it, but I'll read it to you. And we're talking about functional constraints. And functional constraints mean what holds us away from any new information. And this thing says, let's see if this is the right one. Now I got to go back one more up here. Okay, this. A person becomes they're always already listening. Many people hear what you say to them with "I know," or "I already know," or "I know better," already in their listening before they hear almost anything said to them. It's not that they hear what's being said and then think, "Oh yeah, I already know that." It's who they are is "I already know." And now I'm just trying to demonstrate a couple things. One, I'm demonstrating a way that we're going to try to pass certain information on, and the other thing I'm demonstrating is what is going to be in each one of us that allows that information to come in, right? And this is just one example. So the consequences of such already always listening are easy to imagine. The consequences are the same as if you said to someone who's about to talk to you, about to say something to you, "Hey, I already know. Now, what did you want to say to me?" Or like you could say, "Hey, I know better, but what did you want to say to me?" With such a listening, it's difficult for you to hear anything that might be new for you. Or if what is said, in fact, enhances what you know, it's unlikely that it will register for you as a contribution. Rather, with an "I know," already always listening, even a contribution is likely to land for you as a criticism. So we're just looking at some, this is kind of like this is a distinction about what is not recognized, right? We don't recognize that. We just think I actually do already know, but we don't realize that maybe "I already know" is the way we defend ourselves from anything new. And this is just one example. I don't want to press this too much for today, or this method too much. I don't want to press it. But what do you think? Can anyone relate to "I already know"? I mean, the simplest example is you're driving along and the passenger in your car says, "Turn right up there. I know the shortcut." And you say, "Wait a minute, I never go that way. I went that way once. I already know." And it's kind of irritating if somebody's telling you they've got a backseat driver, right? It's a very simple example. Who can relate to I know better, always already listening?
I mean, I can completely relate, and I notice this completely inhibits a total meeting with what is, and it's just so subtle.
I think I hear what you're saying about already knowing, and I think I am a bit like that, like I already know, but I also feel like there has to be a kind of discriminating kind of listening where you don't always agree with everything that's being said. So that's a fine distinction. You have to listen completely to what's being said, but then at the end of that, it has to fit something that, I don't know, the belief structure, or it has to feel right somewhere, right?
That's a very good point, to not agree and also not to disagree, but to simply be a presence and receive what is being said as it is, without any filters, without "am I going to agree with this? Where do I fit into what's being said?" or anything like that. Just a simple receiving without agreeing or disagreeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll show you some other functional constraints without going into them too much. And then, I don't know, just see, I mean, because this is what really blocks us from receiving anything new. So here, this just says identify you're always already listening. The question is, what is the already always listening that you are? And remember, he says you are, not that you have. See if you can find yourself in any of the following. Do I agree or do I disagree with what's being said? Is it right or is it wrong? Is it true or is it false? Right away we jump to like judge it and say, oh no, discard that. Okay, another one is if there's any question of something went wrong, it's not my fault. I'm not to blame. I'm not responsible, especially at work, you know. People might really be into that one, right? Because maybe they have scapegoating going on or something like that. I already know, I know better. That's the one I showed talked to first, right? Another person will say, no, I'm right, you're wrong. You know, I'm always right about this. Okay, here's one for the boss, you know, I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I'm in charge. You must do what I say, right? Or like you're supposed to, you know, like in business, in your company, in your job, you know, this is the way things are done around here. You know, you better get on board or you're going to find out that this is a hard place to live in. I'm busy. What do you want out of me? What's your point? You know, get to the point. People are really proud of how they're occupied, you know, and that they call it their commitment level or something like that. These are just ways people listen to things to block actually what's, you know, these are skeptical things, you know, am I going to dislike what's being said? Is it going to make me look good or bad? Right? Maybe these are more in business, right? What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? Is this going to be a waste of my time? Right away, you're thinking that when somebody's sharing to you, right? Even now, right? Among the five of us or six of us, right? We're thinking like, what is this guy saying? Or what is this gal up to, you know, especially this Richard guy, right? Do I believe in what's being said? What, you know, why are you really saying what you're saying? What do you really mean? You know, what are you trying to get around? You're trying to get around behind me and catch me in a blind alley, right? Is this going to hurt me? Are you going to take advantage of me? Tell me the truth. These are all these skepticisms we have when we meet another person, right? And they're all fueled by fear. And the fear is just by not trusting or I don't know what, you know. There's so many things. You're not going to tell me what to do, are you? Like, you're not bossing me around. Maybe that would be somebody's first defense, like, you know, the most important thing. Or someone else will be exactly the opposite, you know. Tell me what to do. I never know what to do without guidance. So these are some examples of already always listenings. What do you think of that? Is that... I'm sure those are just about universal, right?
I think I admit to all those things. So I think I do all those things. I don't like being bossed around. I don't want to be taken advantage of. I mean, it's universal. Like all the stuff that you read out. There's always some time in my life that I have reacted like that to that, right?
I liked it. I thought there were wise questions to be asking.
How about you, Tom? You never already know, do you?
I think that we think these things, but we might be better off not expressing everything we think.
Does it really make a difference if it's there? It's there, it's present, but we're not going to, we put the cork on it. I'm sure it's already better, you know, but anyhow, it still doesn't really...
yes, I think there's a big difference because my ego and my mind comes up with all kinds of crap that I just ignore. Tell you the truth, because I know I'm not my mind or my ego. So it comes up with all kinds of nonsense And I'm just hearing, I'm just awareness, and I can see what the mind is doing. I can see what the ego's doing, and it doesn't bother me because I just don't listen to it. I tune it out.
Well, I tend to kind of go with what Patricia said if I get it right. The recognition is freedom. And that by not recognizing that stuff, yes, you can somehow just ignore it. But then it stays active. And
Yeah.
that's just a new period of my life,
Yeah, I don't identify with it. So it just quiets down on its own, basically. And after a while, that's the way you really get the ego in line, is by ignoring it through awareness. Awareness doesn't need to hear it, but awareness doesn't do anything. Awareness doesn't get angry. Awareness doesn't get bored. Awareness is just neutral, and it's just, so the ego runs, and then after a while it just calms down because it knows there's no one's listening.
That's a good point, and certainly I'm not saying anything that I'm not trying to refute that or saying that doesn't work. I know it doesn't work for everybody, and then I know it can be, what should I call it, misused in a way, because we already have a kind of a resignment, and we already have a kind of like an escapism going. And, we're using spiritual truths to escape and to be resigned, and to say, okay, the world's perfect, even though we can recite it because other people have said it and we've heard it, and we really don't feel it as a perfection if we really are honest with ourselves. Well, listen, I don't want to keep everyone for all night long and stuff. I do want to kind of present a couple other ideas, and then maybe not to really discuss too much, but just to say like what we're all about, and we all can recognize easily that some people are better at things than other people, right? Whether they've studied it, whether they've got a PhD, whether they've had a specialization, whether they're in psychotherapy. Actually, the psychotherapists I don't think are any better than the non-psychotherapists. But let's just say certain areas of life people have a mastery over, and you wouldn't even say that unless somebody else had a less of a mastery over it, right? If everyone was equal in their capacities, it wouldn't be a distinction. But because there's a distinction called mastery, there's another distinction called not good, very good at it. And so then I want to read this they're just saying in this book, I won't even tell you what it is right now, but I'll just say, here's somebody saying that discipline is the access point to freedom. For instance, consider how our mastery of fear allows us to enjoy freedom from self-constraint. Okay, mastery of fear, whatever that might be. And I'm not going to say how to do it or nothing like that, or that fears are false or anything. But I mean, can you see that if you were less affected by fears, that you would have less self-constraint? You would let yourself go in a more audacious manner. Audacious meaning like you would really move out to contribute. Mm-hmm. Mastery of fear, it allows us freedom from self-constraint. So then I'll say another one. Mastery of issues, problems, and challenges frees us from anxiety and enables us to experience peace. So if we were a master of our problems, of our issues, of our challenges, well then silence would be what's left over, wouldn't it? Even if we, in the face of the biggest issues, if we knew our mastery, we know that so far I've always been a master of my issues. Bring them on, right? I would be living, just as Tom suggests, I would be living in spaciousness and just like unperturbed. What is that mastery of my issues, of my problems?
The mastery is to understand that you are not your issues.
That's a good part of it, isn't it? But
mastery is an understanding. You are not your issues. You are not your problems. You are not your noisy mind. You are not your ego. You are aware of all of them. That is your point of strength. Okay, so you're not trying to build a better person. You're letting that person just Go. Just do what it's going to do. And you're watching it. You're watching that person. And then, like I say, after a while, that whole thing just calms way down because now it's not getting the self-involvement. Okay? What I mean by self-involvement is we think we are that. We really do. Otherwise, why would we be concerned with it? We think we are this noisy mind. We think we are these problems. We think we really do have all this stuff. We say, okay, but it's just the mind. Yes, it is. It's just the mind creating this stuff. So let the mind have its say. Who cares? You're not trying to stop the mind from going. Let it go. Let it go. Just watch it.
To me, that is really good as far as up to the point of that anxiety is kind of like blocking me. And once I realize that I am that piece, that path of understanding.
Yeah.
To me, that's a playground of lots of fun, right? And let's make a real simple example. Like if I'm a parent and I want to be the best parent I could possibly be. And I could take Tom's argument and say, well, who cares what, my kid is on drugs? That's okay. Because like everything's, I'm not going to say everything's perfect, but I mean, what the heck? It's just another thought. And anyhow, we're all on some kind of a drug. We're having coffee or we're smelling bad air or, something, But let's say I want to be the greatest parent ever. How about that, Tara? Did you have to be a good parent?
But don't get me wrong. Being awareness.
Yeah, like fun.
Yeah, don't worry.
Understanding that you are awareness doesn't prevent any doing whatsoever. You can be a good parent. You can be a crack at. You could do whatever. You could be whatever you could be whatever you want to be. You do these things, but you know that you're not that good parent. You're not that doer. You're not that bad parent. You're not that good parent. You're not that parent, period. You're silent awareness that does nothing. You are not the doer. And believe me, it's easier said than done. I know, because therein lies the challenge. But once
I think that's the ground. Like I know I'm not the doer is a ground where I can really get into doing.
Yeah.
And, like you said, like knowing who you are doesn't interfere with activities.
Not
I don't think it interferes with planning activities or trying to perfect activities either. For me, it doesn't interfere with that. Now, at some point, it interferes, and those people probably should just stay away from trying to author activities or trying to modify them and just get into acceptance. But anyhow, what I want to investigate is this thing called mastery. Is there such a thing? It's a distinction. We notice some people are better at things than others. I just said be a master of your issues. Okay, if my issues all resolved, then I would be at peace, right? Okay, Tom says if your issues don't resolve, you're still at peace. Let them resolve too.
You are, friend. It's true.
That I made him up. That these are not, these issues are not me.
Which frees up the attention. Once the contraction releases, the attention is not so narrowed. It just it expands once the contraction's released.
These were the things. Yeah, these were the things I was talking the other day about. Okay, you are these things, and granted, all of these contractions that you speak of, and all of these things that make the mind busy. Okay, this is what's keeping you from the stillness of knowing what you are and being being the awareness that you are. I mean, I shouldn't say being. Knowing that you are the awareness that you are, because the mind's busy, it's racing, and you just can't see it. You can't see it. You really think that you're the doer. When you get involved in the doing and things are going 1,000,000 miles an hour, you really think that you're doing it.
Mastery of our inner critic. It allows us to experience our access our full potential. So then I think this is something that we want to talk about, right? What are these masteries? I'm saying that they're mastery of our fear, mastery of our issues, mastery of our inner critic. I mean, are these things just impossible and it's all worrisome? And if you talk about mastery, that it just throws you into the pits of worry, I don't think so. You know, I know some people would probably get anxious. Oh, I got to master my inner critic now. That would be your inner critic talking, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of these things are objects. The inner critic, these things that you want to master, they are all objects within you. Okay? You are not these objects. You can see them. You can see the fear. You can see the critic. You can see all these things. So your mastery is to see them. Just like what Rena was talking about, inquiring into the pain, silently inquiring and letting the pain do the talking and just let it have its say and let the energy run out. It's kind of the same thing. Just silently watch the inner critic. Silently watch this and don't get caught up in thinking that you are that, okay? Because you aren't. If you were that, you wouldn't be able to see it. You could see it. There's two things in the world.
Well, you know, that's kind of like an extrapolation, you know. That's a logical construction. In other words, so many spiritual teachers say, if you see something, you're not that, right?
Yes.
So that's you're inferring something, right? You're inferring. So then, in other words, you're saying, I'm not a logical creature. I am being. But you're arriving there by logic, you know, because you're inferring that if I can see something, I'm not that. You know, I'm not really trying to talk you out of anything. You can.
That's okay. You're not.
We all need to live our lives the way we're living it, you know, and we all need to do what gives us success for this moment, right? The last one I'll say is mastery of confusion. You know, mastery of confusion frees us from indecision and gives us clarity of purpose and direction. So I don't really have much direction in my life. You know, I don't feel like I have confusion, but I substitute confusion. I substitute cloudiness with that. And it's cosmic cloudiness. It feels so good, you know. I'm a cosmic cloudy person, so I don't need to be confused because the cosmic cloudiness slows me down enough so that I don't have to worry about I'm going to get too far ahead, right? Ahead meaning just into my potential, you know, into who I am as a human being. I don't really have to express that because I stay in my woo-woo cloudiness. And but anyhow, if you were a master of your confusion, if you were a master of your issues, if you were a master of your negative self-talk, if you were a master of your fears, would life unfold differently? I mean, you might be Nelson Mandela or something like that. You might be Muhammad Yunus, that's you know, giving something extra to millions of people, and that's just what I want to consider. And I want to do a series of hangouts, and I want to have these kind of be like a listening club where we can express ourselves, and that it would be worthwhile to express something even new for each one of us because 5 other people are listening and they want to know. And so then we'll find out too. So it's a listening club, but then also I want to get Dr. David Parrish on here next week, and I want to put some material up and talk about things like, which are all concepts and all objects, really. I want to talk about integrity. I want to talk about the power of our word. Mastery is the power of our word, right? I want to talk about our authenticity. I want to talk about what constrains us, you know, both our perceptual and functional constraints. Perceptual constraints are more like we only see what we're looking for, and that's common to all human beings. Functional constraints are more like the list we went through on the always already listening, like we always hear something that's saying, it's not my fault. No, I'm innocent. You can't pin me on this. And that's so busy in our mind that we can't see anything else, you know. And I want to talk about responsibility for creating my tomorrow, you know, this moment this very moment's gonna roll into another moment. Maybe it's not even a separate moment, it's one singular moment, let's say, but somehow through the grace of God it changes, you know. And it changes and reflects our context. You know, I want to talk about context. Like how are we building a context which our being and acting is flowing out of? you know, and part of it's cultural, part of it's, you know, our collective. And so these are some of the things I want to get into. I'm going to try it same time, same station on the 2nd, Sunday the 2nd, and then whoever wants to come, we got 9 spaces, and Parrish will be here probably, and we'll see what we come up with. Anyone want to give some final feedback or final word?
Well, I would say that what I find disturbing about this is the fact that, I mean, the question, which I suppose you might say is esoteric, but in fact I'd say, actually, while you believe that there's a master, the master must be an object, in Tom's words. In other words, in my experience, there never seems to be anybody who is actually doing any of these things. These things come up in, just as Tom was saying, come up in awareness, but they're not actually, there is no mastery of it. It doesn't exist. I suspect that they come up in awareness and then they are allowed to be free and then they go. But I don't think that, I mean, one of the greatest points of freedom that I've experienced is when I was relatively free from ego. So there was absolutely no mastery. There was nobody to be a master. It didn't exist. There wasn't one. And
Could you say it doesn't exist, but it appears? It doesn't exist, but it appears.
A master doesn't exist.
Mastery, I said, not a master.
There isn't such a thing.
Go into a jail and see if there's mastery or a lack of mastery. Maybe there's only a lack of mastery, that people are all at each other's throat, and somehow they've hurt their fellow man, so they wind up in jail. So there must be a lack of mastery then, right?
Well, yes, there is a lack of mastery because they haven't even, I mean, I think that would be a kind of low state of conditioning. But it doesn't imply that there's a master or no master. Not as I see it.
I don't know. I hope we're not misunderstanding each other, because I'm not at all saying there's a master as a human being that's apart from you. I'm just saying mastery is a way to say that you're good at your craft or you're not good at your craft. You're good at your self-limiting talk, or you don't engage in it, or you do. You believe that you can only go so far in so many situations.
It's like moving from that heart space, moving from a clear space, if you like.
Is mastery.
Is mastery.
Or giving that clear space to others would also be mastery, I guess.
Being that clear awareness of the clear space is without doing already giving to the other.
Yeah.
But there isn't anyone being it. That's my point. There is just the being. It's not. It's not individualized at all.
Again, I'm not trying to deny that or try to convince anyone of the other. I'm just saying when that works for you, that's beautiful, and your contribution to everyone around you. And then for all those that don't see that, and let's just talk about mastery. And then if you want to if actually you see there is nothing and no mastery and nobody, I invite you to talk about mastery anyhow, and then you can report to us it didn't change a thing because I was already there or whatever, play a game. But whatever you think.
Yeah, I'd like to try to bridge the gap here between what Patricia, I think Patricia's trying to get at, and what you're saying, Richard. Okay, one thing it's important one thing that's important to understand when we're talking about these things is what level of reality are you talking about, okay? We all live in the relative world, okay? Where, where Dharma is of the utmost importance. Dharma being good behavior, okay? Treat others the way you want to be treated so you don't end up in a dirty prison, blah, blah, blah. Now, that's the relative level. I think Patricia's talking more about the absolute level, where if you want to really be absolute about it, there is no creation, okay? So, I mean, if you start talking about the absolute and the relative and you're mixing them all up in your mind and in your understand, that really clouds the understanding, okay? Because ultimately there is no doer, okay? There is no creation.
And relatively speaking, we are here in this human experience, and why not embody it? Why not embody it completely and play with it, and play with it in the most creative way that leaves us open to that, that space of good creative feeling.
Absolutely. Then you're getting the best of both worlds.
Well,
right?
There is no two worlds. It is one. It is whole.
I know it is. Of course it is. But what I'm saying is you're getting...
In other words, you said we're clouding our understanding. In other words, humans have a belief, and that belief is that things can be divided up with thoughts, and two of those thoughts would be relative and absolute, right? And that somehow that's an aid in our understanding, right?
Yeah,
but actually, there is no relative and no absolute, because just as you say, there's nobody here. There's also no levels, and it's only an overlay, a human overlay level.
Yeah, we do this for the purpose of understanding.
Yeah, but it actually takes us so far, and then it actually sticks us, and it gets into I already know, right? But there is no levels, and there's no mixing up, right? And then all the relative stuff is right here in consciousness. And you can play in both fields. You can play in both fields within unity.
Yeah, the absolute is right here with us now. The relative is right here with us now. It's all right here with us now. It's all one thing. It's absolutely true. We only separate these things for the purposes of clarification, because if we don't have it straight in our minds, first of all, then that creates the cloudiness that's confusing us. That's taking us out of our mastery.
That's one of my issues, That's one of my issues. And one of my masteries is mastery of confusion. And that gives you direction, right? And so then if it creates confusion, then let's look for mastery of confusion, right? And it could be just don't think anymore, because how can you be confused if you don't think? But I think you're leaving behind a really big bag of tools that humans use and that everyone is using in this planet to create hell, misery and hell. And if you want to add anything into that, it would unravel some of it. You got to get in there and have a few of those tools, I believe. But anyhow, I really appreciate all your participation, especially those that are up at 2 in the morning. And I love all you folks, and I hope, I think I made a recording. You can look at what we said, and we'll see if the recording comes out. Thank you, Tara, for being following your intuition on a moment's notice. You're a 5-minute girl, I think, just getting at the end. And I just love an adventurous person like you. And your mom, Anita, for being in.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's nice talking with all of you.
Thank you.
We'll talk again another time.
I hope to see you next Sunday. I'll send you all links. We'll see if you like this, if this thing got digested or if it was a little bit unsettling.
Good night.
Bye.
Goodbye, Patricia.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Tara. Bye, Tom.
Bye, all.
Bye, Rena.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Richard.